Is the holiday season giving you the blues? Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Break. In this episode, Hosai Mojaddidi joins me to talk about how we can get through this holiday season by being prepared mentally, physically, and emotionally. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sikandri, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, each week you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming Anxiety course, an online, self-paced anxiety course to help you manage and control your anxiety from the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Learn how to transform your anxiety in just 6 short weeks. Course registration is now open. To learn more, visit transforminganxiety.com/course. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And right now, specializing in anxiety, I'm noticing a lot of people getting anxious, not only with the change of weather, but the holidays are coming here in the United States and the Western countries, Christmas coming up and New Year. And so that brings up with it a lot of emotions and a lot of fears about what to expect during family gatherings, not knowing how to set boundaries. And so we wanted to have a quick little conversation about that because as Hosai and I, by the way, she's my first cousin. And we, when we used to live close together, we used to have a lot of family gatherings and large gatherings where everybody is, involved in each other's lives. And so when that happens with some people, if you don't have good boundaries, that can become really anxiety provoking. But I'll let Hosai introduce herself really quickly.
Again, I'm so happy to be here. And again, so happy that you're here. As Nafisa mentioned, we are family, but we are also, I look to her as a mentor, someone that I have learned so much about life, really through her from a very young age, and especially on the topic of mental health. In fact, back in 2009 is really where our story, professionally anyway, speaking, begins, because at that point I was working in the Muslim community, alhamdulillah, in various capacities. But one of the areas that I found myself kind of immersed in, that it wasn't really planned, was in the capacity of like a counselor. People were coming to me with their issues and problems. And I found that it was at that time the stigma around mental health was so immense. It was very widespread that people were reluctant to go to see therapists, and so I was kind of doing this, in different situations. But Nafisa knew about that because her and I had talked, and so she kind of came up with this great idea of merging our two areas together. Because of course she's trained, she's a clinical psychologist. This is her area of expertise, but she knew that I had those inroads into the Muslim community, and that there was a way to bring our respective experiences together. So we created a website called Mental Health, the number 4muslims.com. And that was such an incredible project, because it allowed both of us to really highlight all of these issues that we found common in the Muslim community, of course, because we're human and we certainly have mental health issues like all humans do. But we were able to really approach it from a very, thoughtful lens of bringing together the clinical and the Islamic perspective on these topics. So it's been a wonderful, however many years of working with her and other experts from the mental health field, as well as, Muslim scholars and people who are very attuned to these things. And I've just immensely, benefited so much from her. That's why I'm so happy to have her here active on Clubhouse. And I think I encourage all of you to please follow her here, follow her club, because the topics that she talks about, one of the things that I really, she didn't ask me to say this, but I'll just say this, is that she highlights topics that are relevant, that are not just so like academic or high level that it's kind of like, okay, unless I'm in the field, I would be interested. But they're actually real life things. Like, for example, this, where some of us are going to have to deal with this. Maybe we already dealt with some of it in November, and we're still reeling off of those conversations that we had just a few weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago. So as we're approaching this next season, I think it's so important to highlight ways to create boundaries to protect ourselves, because this can affect people's mental well-being, spiritual well-being, relationships. So I want to, again, applaud you, Nafisa, for thinking of it. And I'm excited to learn from you about how we can create those boundaries, inshallah. So Mike is back to you.
Thank you, Hosai. Continue and just have this open discussion, because I know for a lot of people, just even the change in weather can bring up just mood issues, because we're having longer nights and shorter days, and so not having that sun exposure. A lot of us are going to work when it's still dark and coming home when it's dark, and so we're not getting that sunlight that we need to kind of balance our mood and release those feel good chemicals. And so that can affect our mood. We can be more irritable, which can also affect our relationships, right? We can end up being more reactive, being more irritable. And then when you go to these family gatherings and all the holiday parties and holiday parties at work, you might be more reactive to the questions people are asking. So what do you do? How do you set boundaries? And Hosai, you can just unmute yourself and just continue to have this conversation and this back and forth with me about what are your experiences like. Are you seeing like maybe even your husband with his work parties, do you see people having these issues, or what's coming up, or what have you noticed?
Sure. Sure. So, sure. I mean, I, just had a very long, holiday break for Thanksgiving. I actually visited family, and we had multiple events, and so many conversations, right, from all the different groups that were there. So personally speaking, definitely kind of found myself jumping from one topic to another. Some of them getting a little heated. There are a lot of issues I think that are polarizing right now, right? Politics certainly are very polarizing. We have the vaccine issue, the mandates, all of these very serious topics that are having consequences. People are having to deal with these things. So they're not just topics of interest, but they're actually affecting our day to day. And they are on the minds of a lot of people. But navigating those conversations in a thoughtful way. And as you all know, I have the club Mizan, Islam and EI. So emotional intelligence is a very big topic that I love to discuss. And certainly I hope to practice it. But how to have these conversations in an emotionally intelligent way, which means to not be triggered, right, is something that I have to, like all of us, think about all the time. Like, I have certain positions and I have certain perspectives on certain topics, but I also have to learn that there are going to be differences of opinion when it comes to a lot of these things. And the way that we listen is, I think, really important, just as much as what we have to say, because many of us are very opinionated, and that's fine. We're using our critical thinking and reasoning skills. We're hopefully displaying, some maturity in trying to be, again, mindful of what's going on. But when it comes to having healthy boundaries, I think that's, for me, a sort of the starting point is the agreement I have with myself about how I'm going to choose to engage with people. And if my agreement is I want to try to emulate the prophetic example as much as possible, then that's something that I'm going to take very seriously, but not to feel the need to convince everyone. And I think that's something that our society needs to kind of reevaluate, that understanding of this concept of I have to, unless I win the argument, I can't walk away. Unless I overpower and dominate and railroad the conversation, I've lost somehow. I think that's a really big problem, that we need to address. So, I certainly had to do that, as I said, in my recent, with over Thanksgiving, because there were topics that I am passionate about, but I found myself having to bite my tongue and just listen more. And as you mentioned, my husband, yes, he's had to do that too with certain circles, professionally speaking, as well. So I think we all kind of, have to prepare ourselves, but it's usually around these topics, right? These very polarizing topics Nowadays anyway. Maybe 5 years ago there were different topics, sports, things that were a little bit more benign and less controversial. But I think the climate, the zeitgeist of today is very intense, and all that emotion can come up to the surface when people find, that we're finally in these social settings again, as opposed to these removed online platforms that we've been just getting, Zoom calls and all these phone calls, FaceTime. That's how primarily many of us for the quarantine have been connecting with others. So to find ourselves now back in those spaces where we're with all of our family or friends, or a lot of them, and all those emotions can come to surface, we have to think twice about how can we do that responsibly. But I think there's so much to say, so I'm gonna now pass it back to you.
Okay, well, thanks. One thing that came up for me when you were talking is my own history with social anxiety. When I was, God, parties used to be so difficult for me, and holiday parties were especially going to work parties would create a lot of social anxiety. But I was just one thing that popped up for me is back then there was no social media. I didn't have to look a certain way so that it'd be presentable for Instagram, right? Not being Instagram ready and Instagram perfect. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure. I mean, I don't have that pressure on me now, but for a lot of people that do have that you have to have the most perfect dinner table, the most perfect house, because everything has to be Instagram ready now. What are you noticing for people? And this could be you, Hosai, or it could be anybody in the audience. Is that an anxiety provoking topic for people? Just having like all this, like I know anxiety runs in my family, and my mom used to get very anxious around people coming over to the point that everything had to be perfect, like the perfectionism that goes along with the whole anxiety and OCD, and it would make having people over really miserable because it was so stressful. And I know that some people end up struggling with that. So if anybody wants to share their experience, or Hosai, if you've experienced this or you've helped somebody through this, just talk about it. Let me know.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up because, as you know, we started off. We were just the title is Holiday Blues, and so we want to be mindful of all the different layers to getting ready for this season, and that's absolutely is certainly one of them. Whether you're hosting or attending these events, a lot of times the optics and the the fact that yes, we've been in this quarantine state, and this is my first sort of social public appearance. I gotta look good, or if I'm hosting, everything has to be perfect. That pressure can absolutely cause a lot of anxiety. And I know people who don't even want to socialize for that reason. There are people who've said to me that they don't want to go out because the pressure of having to look a certain way. And even like, for example, not just individually, but like a couple, like if you're going through a rough patch in your relationship, and I'm married, and I certainly know what that feels like, right? When you get an invite to go somewhere, but right like an hour before the invite, you're squabbling with your partner about something. The tension is so thick in the car there, and then you're like, "Oh God, is everybody gonna know? Right? Am I gonna?" Because some people just cannot hide, their feelings. It's very clear that they have had that they're in a negative space, right? Because they can't pretend. So if you are that transparent of a person, and you know that you kind of wear your emotions on your face, then you are going to have that over, that's going to add another layer of anxiety or tension to you, because it's like now on top of having this negative altercation or whatever it was with my spouse, partner, mother-in-law, whoever it was, right? A family member doesn't have to be a partner. I have to now go and save face and kind of play the part of like, oh, it's so great to see you, when I'm inside internally, just feeling so negative. So that can be a huge deterrent. And some people, having had those experiences in the past, may not even want to attend certain things. And I've actually talked to a few people who have like coming events, and they're looking for ways out. Like what, how can I like not go? What are ways, because of these types of experiences? So we've gotten to a point where I think being around people has come with so much baggage and so much, like negativity, that some people are, becoming more and more, reclusive and just kind of inward, and not really wanting to socialize anymore, which speaks volumes about, like you said, well, what could be causing this? And I think the social media factor is definitely part of it, because you don't want people to catch you in that candid shot, like I don't want to be a part of someone's photo album when I'm not prepared, just because they're getting like the highlights of their event. But maybe, I'm like, like it happens. If you're just not aware of yourself or you're in the moment, you could be, kind of in a compromised position, eating something and your mouth looks all awkward and you just look strange. So I think, that can certainly, cause a lot of tension for people. Like, I don't want that. And then I don't want people watching me. I don't want people knowing my business. So all of these things are, I think, because of this fishbowl world that we now live in, have certainly contributed to people's anxieties around social events in general, but especially the holidays, because you're going to likely see people that you haven't seen in a long time. So it's kind of like this is, a whole year has gone by and I need to be in my best. And if I'm not, then I just don't want to be there at all. So I've certainly been a part of conversations.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, we have some very talented family members, mashallah, in our family that are, when they put on a host of an event, it's perfection overload, and then it's so intimidating to go into that environment. And you feel like you have to also dress the part and look a certain way. And I don't know, that triggers my social
Oh yeah.
anxiety.
I mean,
But
sorry, I just because I know exactly who you're talking about. But I just to respond to that, like this is actually another topic that so Nafisa knows I have some very high achieving siblings, mashallah, and one of them in particular, she is like really just amazing at hosting. Like she's like really like top notch.
she's super everything.
She could do this as a business. That's
She
how
could.
she is. But she knows because I'm very open with her. I'm like, I will not cook for your like events, potluck, anything. I will always cater. I'll bring a catered dish because I refuse to subject myself to the criticism, and sisters, you know how it is. Everybody who has sisters, there's no filter, but it's all from love. I don't take it, it's not like it's a personal thing for me, but I've just learned over the years it's a lot better for me to not overthink it, overanalyze. Oh my God, what am I going to make? What am I going to do? As opposed to just, I'm going to pick up this from the restaurant, and then you can deal with not liking it with that particular establishment if that's the case, or if it didn't meet your standards. I mean, she's mashallah, very gracious. But I think the point being here that yes, when you have people who have such high standards when it comes to their level of, their aesthetic or just their what they do, it can absolutely cause, that sort of, paralysis. Like, what do I do? But, that's where you kind of humanize everybody and just also yourself and say, you know what, I don't need to just have it black and white and not even attend and then cause a whole other array of problems. How about I just, engage in a way that I protect myself from criticism or whatever that I don't want to deal with, and I can still enjoy, the rest of the evening or the rest of the event. So these types of subtle things and changes and tweaks can, I think, really make all the difference in terms of these experiences. But this is why this conversation is so important. So I'm sorry, I jumped in. I wanted to.
No, that was perfect, and I'm glad you kind of came up with a solution, because that's what I want to end on, is to talk about some of the solutions, the options that we have. I wish I had these options when I was in my teens and 20s, so that I didn't make each family event so miserable for myself. And what I realized for myself, and I don't know if anybody else in the audience can relate to this, is I would get myself all worked up until maybe 5 minutes into walking into the door, and then realize, what the heck was I so worked up about? This is my family. I'm used to being around them. And so realizing that my fears were irrational, my fears were controlling me, and I wasn't, looking at it as objectively as I did after I would be there. But one trick that I learned when I was younger is to go. I heard this quote a long time ago, and it just really resonates with me. It says, when you're nervous, be of service. And so when I would be really nervous initially, I would go straight to the kitchen and I'd volunteer to help. And as soon as I started helping, then I started relaxing and I became part of the event instead of just being a guest at the event. And so that's one solution that I have as far as how to break that ice, how to like figure out, or finding a pet. Like I see so many memes right now about all these introverts going and finding the dog in the family and the party, or the cat in the party, and just bonding with that dog and cat just so that they can calm themselves down, or talking to the children. to kind of ease your own anxiety. But also, there are things you can do. There are essential oils you can use to kind of calm yourself so that you're not so amped up before an event, and not making a situation, blowing it out of proportion in your own mind, because we have this little monster in our head that freaks out. It's like Chicken Little. It doesn't have a lot of information. It freaks out over the dumbest issues. And so having essential oils like lavender, or there's other ones that lavender is normally calming. There's marjoram is another one that's very calming, that you can put on the back of your neck. There's doTERRA has some really wonderful oils. One of them is called Balance, and it has a really good blend of oils that you can put on the back of your neck and the back of your ears and calm yourself down. Breathing in essential oils before you go into the party is a way to calm yourself down as well. Eating foods that are rich in serotonin, for example, like salmon or beets, or having a banana, cheese and crackers, that also releases feel-good chemicals in your brain so that you can feel calm when you're at these events. And then once you're there, I mean, guided meditations, obviously, if you're like sitting in the car and somebody else is driving, you can just close your eyes and do some deep breathing exercises and do some guided meditations to calm your fight or flight in your inside of you, because it's like a baby or a toddler going anywhere. They'll freak out if they don't know what's going on. But if you talk calmly to them, if you're nicely explaining what to expect, and then just really normalizing the situation, your brain will calm down if you do that the same thing for yourself. So does any of that resonate with you, Hosai, or have you tried any of those to help you?
Oh, I love everything you just shared. Thank you for mentioning all of that. Especially, I mean, I just want to mention here because some people might not be familiar with like the therapeutic, and scientifically based, effects of the essential oils. But these are very concentrated oils that have been proven. We know aromatherapy is real. There are people who, I've certainly used them as well. There, you mentioned DoTerra, which is one of the companies that really has high quality oils. You want to be careful because you'll see, I've seen them at like different stores. They sell these little vials of essential oils, but a lot of them, whether or not they're pure, or have, been diluted with a bunch of other chemicals, don't use that. You got to use high quality, good stuff in order to feel the effects of these things. But they have Serenity as well. You mentioned,
Oh, I love Serenity.
right? They have great oils and you can get their kits. But anyway, this isn't a pitch for doTERRA. It's just there's different levels of oils that are out there, and if you want to get the unpolluted, non-diluted, really pure oils, you want to go through a company like doTERRA that has the reputation, and then you'll know what we're talking about here. So that's one part of it. And then everything you said, even about foods, it's so important to know your body, because one of the things that I think is a blind spot when we're preparing for holiday gatherings is that people who are notoriously hangry, like they know that they get hangry, will starve themselves because they want to splurge at the event, but they don't realize that by doing that and not even having some, like, your blood sugars, your kind of levels balanced a little bit, you may actually enter the gathering already in a really hyper negative state, and then it can kind of derail from there. So if you know that about yourself, don't think logically like, oh, I'm just gonna not eat today because I really want to enjoy my feast, but think, I need to know. This is where, again, emotional intelligence, the first quality of self-awareness, is so key. Know your patterns. Know what foods trigger a good response out of you. Like if they're calming foods, like if coffee makes you kind of heartbeat, all over the place, and you're a little jittery and weird and like kind of like, and I know people who are like that. They have caffeine, symptoms or effects. Don't maybe have that, but like have herbal tea, something that's going to induce a calming state, and foods, like you said, that promote serotonin and other feel good hormones. You've talked about this before, which I think is so great. And maybe if you want, in just the few minutes that we have here left, is to kind of bring back the connection, right, between the gut and the brain, because I think it's lost on a lot of people, the fact that these feel good hormones are actually made in the stomach. But I would love for you to explain more about that, because you do such a good job.
Oh gosh, yes. The gut is basically our main, even though it's our brain that does a lot of the work that we're familiar with, our gut is basically the rulers of our body, because they are the ones that are releasing the feel good chemicals. What we have no idea about is that 80 to 90% of our neurochemicals, like serotonin, which makes us feel happy and makes us feel calm, is made in the gut. And so it's so important to activate and create an environment for the gut to do its job so that it can release those feel good chemicals. And diet is definitely important because what we eat determines that. I'm so glad you brought up coffee. And a lot of people with anxiety should not have coffee. It's at least even first thing in the morning. And if you can wait a couple of hours, like maybe around 10 o'clock to have that cup of coffee, but have green tea extract in the morning if you really need to wake up. That will do so much for you as far as not making you feel reactive, not making you feel jittery, like Hosai was mentioning. And then also eat the foods that you eat, like I said, it can calm that. But if you're in a state of fight or flight, then your digestion shuts down. And when that shuts down, your body's not releasing the feel good chemicals because your body is preparing to run away from that saber-toothed tiger or the bear or whatever. And so we need to calm ourselves down. So maybe in that day, like Osai was saying, do not starve yourself. Start with a healthy protein in the morning, eat clean that day, start off maybe with some meditation or go for a nice walk, do some yoga to calm your system down, do some journaling about some of the things that you're expecting so that you're prepared mentally for this event if you have social anxiety or if you're feeling depressed about seeing all these people. And so taking care of your gut, especially during the winter months, is also going to help you with that whole winter blues that can happen because of the low level of light exposure that we're getting. But then also they have these little lights that they make, where they artificial lights that you can put next to where you're sitting, like at work or on your computer, that can create the simulation of sunlight so that your brain is getting that light so it can release those feel good chemicals. There's so much involved in all this, but I think that, let's say you're preparing for a party, we'll just use that as an example. Just starting the day off very slowly, having a really good breakfast, going for a nice walk, maybe doing some yoga, eating foods that are rich in serotonin, like I mentioned, salmon or beets, or even some breads and cheese, bananas. There's also supplements that can create that, like St. John's wort is really good. 5-HTP is really good for calming your system down. Using essential oils like we talked about, serenity, balance, lavender, just inhaling those really feel good scents that can calm your system down. The thing with that Jose was mentioning, essential oils are so powerful, and there's so much science to back it up, that literally one drop on the back of your neck it'll take 20 minutes for it to go into your entire bloodstream, but it reaches your brain within 20 seconds. So using something like an essential oil like good quality, high quality essential oils that are not altered in any way, can be really calming and soothing for you to help you get through situations like this, where you have to meet strangers or face people you don't like or deal with family members that are really annoying, because we all have them. We all have annoying family members. That's just a given. But the less
Counted in your list, Nafis.
huh?
I said, I hope I'm not counted in your list. I'm just
You are definitely not on that list, but we do have them, but at the same time, you might become annoying to me if I'm reactive, right? If I'm not in a good headspace, if I'm not taking care of myself, I'm just going to be reactive to whatever you're saying. And I'm going to might blame you for it, but really it's on me because I didn't come to the party with the right state of mind. And that's something we need to take into consideration.
I actually, as you were speaking, I was reminded, I wanted to share this. I'm sure you know, but you may have forgotten. So after my father passed away, Allah yarhamhu, my mother lived in, their house by herself really for that first year. Of course, we visited her and what have you, but she went through a bout where she was like really anxious. She just would be overcome with fear, even though for a while it was just like, fine, and she didn't have really any of these thoughts, but for some reason she started getting paranoia and anxiety just being home alone. And it wasn't until you, Nafisa, came, and subhanallah, first of all, you had some essential oils. I don't know if it was the serenity or lavender or one of these, but you gave her the remedy from the essential oil, but also the words that you told her about just like giving her a handle on her thoughts. It had such an immediate effect. She literally would say, she said, Nafisa did it. The oil worked. As soon as she told me I need to stop thinking of these things, she's like, it all went away. And alhamdulillah, ever since then, she never had those fears. It was just amazing. So, when we're talking about the potency of these things, they're very real because she felt the effect of it from the oil, but also, mashallah, with the advice you gave her. So, words have power. These, remedies that Allah's placed, kind of sprinkled them throughout His creation. There's plants that are medicinal, herbal medicines. Of course, we have, other more, manufactured or made medicines. But the point being is Allah in His creation has given us all of these means of being able to protect ourselves and to really fortify ourselves for these types of physical, also mental and spiritual realities. And so I just wanted to kind of mention that, but also bring it back to, the initial intention of this whole conversation, which is, we need to be prepared, right? We need to be prepared as we are about to enter into, some time or some the next couple of weeks where we may be meeting with family and friends. How do we do that? So there's different, things that we can do. We talked about, for example, setting boundaries, having agreements with yourself before you enter these spaces on how you're going to choose to engage, taking these other measures in terms of our diet, our sleep, maybe taking all these factors into consideration to prepare. I feel like we've covered a lot, right? We've covered diet, we've covered, the spiritual, and then also just, I think those agreements, I would say that's really key to have that conversation with yourself. Like, what am I going to allow myself? What am I not? And if you know that there's certain people who are button pushers, and they're going to get under your skin, then maybe you choose, to have no conversations, or very limited conversations, I should say, but certainly not any that are of the politically divisive nature, or not politically, sorry, of the divisive nature, like where that it's going to cause unnecessary quarrels and debates. But like, you have a rule: I'm not going to engage because I know that person. They know how to push my buttons. Just not going to talk to them about that. How much they provoke me. Using, like Lisa said, the other people in the space with you to your advantage. I love if there's children there, and in public settings, of course, I'd love to kind of jump into their circles, see what they're talking about, what they're doing, just because their energy's so pure. So that's I love the youngins, and I get into teacher mode, so storytelling, all that stuff. But it does really bring me into a state of calm.
You don't have to make a scene when you don't want to talk to these button pushers. You can just have ways. You know that Seinfeld episode? I don't know if I'm aging myself here by talking about it, but I'm sure people are watching Seinfeld on Netflix now, so maybe it's the younger generation knows what I'm talking about. But basically, Elaine and Jerry would go to parties, and they would have a rule where if they're stuck talking to somebody they don't like, they would tap their head or do something to basically send a signal like, "Hey, save me." So you can have like ways to excuse yourself from that situation, or you can say, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to make a call. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I got to go make a call," when it's getting really tense. So you can find a way to get yourself out of that situation and break that loop. And then you can circle back if you wanted to talk to them about something else. But just excusing yourself to go get some water or go help somebody, or breaking that pattern, can change that conversation so that you're not stuck talking about things you don't feel comfortable talking about.
I'm Sophia. I live in Egypt, and I want to share my experience. A few years ago, I had a great opportunity to travel to the US as a professional fellow, and the most thing that worried me was it's my first time to go there, and a part of the program was that I have to spend one day and go to an American family and spend the whole day, 24 hours, with someone I've never known, from different culture, from a country I've never been before. So this was just so worrying for me. What I want to share about this, that when I arrived at Amy's home, she was my host, I was surprised that she invited many of her friends to a party the day I arrived. So instead of being with just one person, a host, I found myself among many other women setting up a party, and I'm part of this. Above all, it was a Halloween, and I come from Egypt. We have never had a Halloween party before. And this experience showed me that being in a party sometimes is better than having a one-to-one conversation with only just one person, because I had the chance to move around, choose maybe someone I feel more at ease while speaking to, someone who's I like their conversation and I want to sit down beside her and talk more. So I feel that my host, did something good to me when she invited her friends. So instead of being embarrassed, both of us spending the whole day together, maybe we don't feel good. She gave me this chance to see more women and to try to choose whether I feel good speaking to someone and better than someone else.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You're so right. Your friend did you a favor by bringing other people, so that you didn't feel like you had to carry the conversation the whole time.
Yeah, I feel so. I recognize this after the party. After 3 years now, I still have good connections with these women. I still talk to them. I still have them as friends. So sometimes being in a party is not that bad. There is a positive perspective being in a party. You are free to choose whom to speak to, whom to engage more to, and whom to set boundaries with.
Perfect. Exactly. That was so well said. Thank you for sharing that, Safia.
You're welcome. Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
Thank you so much, Sophia. It was really lovely to hear your experience, mashallah. And you gave, I'm sure, anyone who's had some trepidation or who has some trepidation about, how to deal with upcoming events, some hope, like you said, that you can actually have some really positive experiences if you open yourself up to new things and new experiences. I mean, for you, coming to a new country, having completely, kind of being thrown into a situation you've never been before, but then come out with such a positive outlook is really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. That was awesome.
Another tip, that when you go to a party, before going, it's better if you just make sure that you can take someone with you who you feel good being with. I mean, a company.
A lot of times it is best to take somebody with you. Like I said, they can be your person that you can, have a connection with and say, hey, if I'm stuck doing something, please come and rescue me. But sometimes you don't have that option. And when you don't have that option, figure out how you can maybe help out in the kitchen or talk to the people that you want to talk to, and then kind of avoid what you don't want to end up getting involved in. So those are certainly there's a lot of little tips and tricks that you can make the time of you being alone at a party more manageable. Anything to share, Jose?
Yeah, I actually loved everything. Thank you so much again, Sophia. Another thing I would add as we talk about, different ways to prepare is to also think of topics that you want to talk about, right? Because I feel like this idea that we kind of enter these spaces just waiting for others, maybe the hosts or other people who maybe have those domineering personalities to take the lead on every conversation, to start the games, to start the topics of debate, whatever they are, is also sometimes it works against us, because maybe you do have something to share. Maybe you have knowledge about something, or just you've been reading something that's very insightful and that's transformed you, that's helped you, or just an area that I think you want to share with other people for whatever reason, but feeling empowered that it's kind of an equal level playing field when you're in these spaces, and to just give up your ability to also say something of your own will and volition and desire, as opposed to being in the mindset that you just have to be there to listen and let others dictate to you, or let others kind of guide and lead, and then you kind of have to react to those conversations. I feel like when people are empowered to see themselves as equally having something of worth to say and share, and that it's not just because someone's more popular or someone's more well spoken or someone seems more knowledgeable or has a certain expertise, that those are the only people that should ever speak, then you just feel like, hey, I can go in with a list of topics that I want to talk about. So I always say, and I would say this even more so
if you're going in an environment where you know that there are those gossipers, those button pushers who kind of do like to just, I don't know, whatever, for whatever reason, be provocative, I would say don't let them, just kind of go in there early. First of all, timing is really important. The early bird gets the worm. So make sure that you're there ahead of time and that you are, like Nafisa said, get in there, help out, position yourself as someone who is, has a little bit more authority to speak your mind. And then when you're sitting for a gathering or a meal or whatever it is, if you're just kind of doing, that the appetizer round or whatever, just be like, hey, you guys, did you guys hear about whatever it is? And then mention an article, mention a book, mention the movie, mention the documentary. Or if you came back from a recent trip and you have here, you guys want to see these pictures. But have those things in your arsenal so that you can kind of pull them out, pull out the tricks in your hat, as they say, when you need to, so that you're not, anybody else's victim.
I love what you said. Yeah. Don't just go in there feeling like you have no say in what kind of conversations that you're supposed to have. If something comes up that you don't feel comfortable with, just excuse yourself and say, oh, wow, I'd love to talk about that right now, but maybe I'm going to go help out instead, or I just have to do something. Whatever you need to do, excuse yourself so that you're not caught in a conversation that you don't want to have. Or maybe, like Hosai said, have a list of topics you want to bring up that you can talk about. And then if something goes on, like Safia was saying, that if you're at a party with a lot of different people, if you don't like talking to one person, that's the beauty of having a lot of different people. You can excuse yourself politely and go talk to somebody else about something that actually resonates with you or you like addressing. Going to a party ready with the right state of mind, preparing yourself so that you're not reactive, maybe getting a good night's sleep, making sure you're eating something that's serotonin rich, that like bananas or something that has like a serotonin rich food, but not starving yourself before the party, because when you go in there, you're going to be hangry and probably more reactive and more sensitive to people saying things. So it can ruin your mood. Maybe starting off your day in a very calm way, starting off with maybe a guided meditation before, either in the morning or before or while on your way to the party. And I'm talking about people that actually are anxious about these events. Some people really look forward to it. They spend so much time on what they're going to wear and how they're going to look that they're neglecting their mind and their body. Because if you're not in a right state of mind, it doesn't matter how beautiful you look or how amazing your outfit is. You need to be in the right state of mind. So eating the right foods, making sure you're preparing yourself by taking some essential oils with you in case you do end up having some anxiety, taking the right vitamins and supplements, like I said, doing some guided meditation or going for a walk. All of those things are really important. We mentioned taking essential oils with you, like serenity or lavender, or something that has a calming effect on you, so that you're not feeling like you're left without any support. And then if you can go with somebody that's great. But if you don't have anybody to go with, like I said, when you're nervous, be of service, go and help out in the kitchen, ask if they need help. When I'm in the kitchen, if I'm washing the dishes, even if you stand and just talk to me and chat with me, that'll make me feel good. So just go and chat with the hostess. If they don't need help, just kind of support them and just catch up with them, because that could make them feel supported as well. And then finding the kids to talk to, if you're feeling really overwhelmed by the number of people, the way to break the ice for yourself is to maybe talk to the little kids, or if there's a pet in the house, pet the pet. And just like I said, just go in there with the right mindset, because a lot of times we can say it's other people that are annoying and really irritating, but it could be our mindset. Maybe we went there hangry. Maybe we went there really irritable and irritated anyway, and so we're more reactive to what people are saying. So when you go in with the right mindset, hopefully these parties are not going to be as overwhelming and annoying for you.
This topic of anxiety, which is kind of where we started off, social anxiety, just anxiety in general about holidays, is something we need to really address more thoughtfully and consistent. That I'm so glad that we talked about this topic, because just the general topic of anxiety is something that so many people misunderstand in our community, because they look at it, they frame it in the sense that you need to have some diagnosis to even be an anxious person. Whereas what I love about what you do is that you
really bring us back to that awareness, which is also very prophetic, that anxiety is a human quality. It is something that we all experience, but it presents differently for different people. And I love this layer of this conversation because I think a lot of people just don't, they think of themselves as somehow being superior or spirit, I don't know, spiritually higher because, oh, I don't know what anxiety is. I'm not an anxious person. All human beings have it at different degrees and different ways, and it manifests in different ways. But to kind of bring people to that awareness, like, don't look at it like, oh, there's something wrong with you. I have anxiety, you have anxiety, we all have anxiety. But the best thing to do is to empower yourself in all the ways that we've shared, so that you don't feel the effects of what happens when you're not prepared. And that's really what it comes down to. Preparedness is where it's so empowering, and it helps you to just not walk into an ambush, to not walk into situations that are going to hurt you, or to that have toxic consequences, where weeks on end you're thinking about those conversations that you wish you could have had differently or done differently. That's what preparedness does. And I think that's really what, mashallah, you've given us here today, a lot of food for thought on how we can best prepare. So I wanted to just bring that, to the conversation, that please don't think of anxiety as something only unique to people who are certain, who have some problem. No, we are by human nature. And, we have this quality because the world is anxiety inducing, and other people can make you anxious. So any thoughts on that?
And also, don't assume you don't have anxiety because you haven't been diagnosed with anxiety. Anxiety runs deep in my family, and I can bet you that not a single one of us has been diagnosed with anxiety. So I was just on Facebook scrolling, and there's an article that said 9 calming foods to reduce anxiety and stress during the holidays. How perfect timing. So one of them is cooked tomatoes, spinach, avocado, salmon, dark chocolate, walnuts, tryptophan, anything that has tryptophan in it, and sesame seeds. So that's just one additional addition to what we were talking about as far as the foods to eat. But I love what you said, being prepared. It's so important to just go in there with a prepared state of mind.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks again. Have a wonderful day. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or a 5-star rating, since that'll help others find the podcast. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop. I can't wait to see you here next week. Bye for now.